good afternoon, everyone. We're here in the European Commission in Brussels from Directorate General for Climate Action, and I'm Polona Gregorin, the head of unit responsible for maritime emissions. And we would like to welcome you to another in the series of webinars that we are co-organizing with our colleagues in Lisbon in the European Maritime Safety Agency, EMSA. So we have already seen that the shipping companies are now working on the first two milestones for the implementation of the EU emission trading system to the maritime sector, which of course are the focus of the webinar today. So, and that is the approval of the monitoring plans and also the opening of maritime operator holding accounts in the Union Registry. We have focused on the previous step, on the first step in the previous webinar. So today we're going to particularly focus on the opening of maritime operator holding accounts, so-called MOHAs, and also prerequisite to that, which is the attribution of the shipping companies to the administering authority. So to this end, we will present you the attribution of the shipping companies to the administering authority of member states, and also the role of the Union ETS registry with a focus on rules and procedures for the opening of MOHAs. And for that, we will have two extensive live demos of the relevant IT systems. So first, a demo by EMSA colleague to guide you step by step on how to ask first for attribution of your company if it's not already on the list of companies published in January. And then we will follow that with a live demo by the IT colleagues in charge of the Union Registry to guide you through the MOHA account environment as deployed earlier this year. So as usual, given that we have a high number of participants, we would like to ask you to submit any questions in the chat, and we will address those during dedicated point at the end of today's agenda when we have an exchange of views and Q&A. As mentioned earlier, the webinar is being recorded, and it will be further distributed for communication purposes. We will also publish it on our website as usual, but rest assured that the name of participants will be anonymized, so to sort of protect everyone's data. So I thank you already in advance for your participation today, and I will leave the floor first to my colleague Luca Colonna to launch our presentation on the topics today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Polona. We can now move to the presentation. I'm Luca Colonna. I work in Polona's unit, and I deal with Maritime MRV and ETS Maritime in DG CLIMA. Before going into the structure of the presentation, a kind reminder of the relevant links you might find of use if you're not already familiar with those. In this slide, you can see a set of hyperlinks which will grant you easy access to our implementation support tools and communication tools, both the web pages of DG CLIMA on Europa and EMSA, our FAQs. Notably, the most recent addition is the one on monitoring plan revision, but we are also planning further updates of the previously released one on MRV and ETS. Our links to the webinars that you can find at the section events of the CLIMA webpage. We usually publish a couple of days max after the event the full recordings and also the slideshow, so you can access them anytime, including the Q&A session at the end of each webinar. We recently published an updated list of contact points with the administering authorities of member states, so in case you have any specific question to be addressed to those, now you have the contacts, email contacts, also in some cases phone contacts. And finally, our unique help desk Fit for 55, which you can use as single entry point for any question on ETS, MRV, and now also fuel EU issues. Next slide, please. So today we are going through a first presentation which will be given by me and my colleague Mathieu, to look a bit in the compliance steps of companies, address the issue of the identification of the shipping company responsible for ETS and MRV compliance, then move to the attribution mechanism of shipping companies in respect of their administering authorities, to the opening of MOHAs in the Union Registry. And these first parts will then be followed by the two live demos mentioned by Polona earlier on, which will guide you through the THETIS MRV functionalities in respect of the attribution, and a live demo in the Union. Now, moving to the first part of the presentation, a quick reminder of the key... Yeah, we lost sound again. Yeah, I think. Can you hear us now? Sorry, we are experiencing some technical issue. Okay, the sound appears to be back, so I will continue. Looking at the compliance steps, the very first thing to do, as mentioned in earlier communication events, is to identify the shipping company. The decision to be made here by the company is to decide who shall be the one responsible for MRV and ETS compliance. Of course, this is a decision to be based on the understanding and consultation of the relevant legislation, an issue which has been explored in depth during a dedicated webinar, the third webinar. Again, here you have hyperlinks in these documents, so in case of doubts, if you want to know more, you can consult those webinars. Second step is to finalize the revision of the monitoring plan, revise it, and send it to the verifier for his assessment through the dedicated IT tool, THETIS MRV. And again, to this specific step, we dedicated the latest webinar held a couple of weeks ago, the fourth webinar. If you have missed it, you can consult all the material clicking on this link. As a next step, we will have the identification of the administering authority, which for those companies listed in the SHIP could take place already since end of January, to be followed by the request for opening the MOHA. As you can see here, we highlighted those because these are exactly the focus, the scope of today's webinar. After that, we have the first deadline, the first milestone as set in the legislation, which is the 1st of April 2024, so in a couple of weeks, by which companies shall submit the previously assessed monitoring plan to their administering authority for approval. And this will then leave the full year for the emissions monitoring and reporting, with the next deadline in March 2025, at the end of March, when all the verified data in the form of emissions reports and company emissions reports will have to be submitted into the system. Also, of course, to be always reminded that in case where there is a change of company according to the legislation, an additional obligation to submit verified partial emission reports will arise, and therefore such obligation might well precede the 31st of March 2025 deadline. Now, before, next slide please, before going into the details of the attribution mechanism, the step 0 is the identification, as mentioned, of the shipping company. You might already seen this picture because this was taken from the third webinar we gave in December. If you still have any doubts on who could be the shipping company in accordance with the legislation, please consult that webinar. As mentioned, the shipping company concept is something which is defined in the legal text, and consistently, whenever we refer to shipping company here during this webinar or in any other implementation and communication material issued by DG CLIMA and EMSA, we refer to the legal definition of shipping company within MRV and ETS directive, meaning the responsible entity, the legal entity which can assume MRV and ETS responsibility. Also, as this picture shows, there is a clear interlinkage between ETS and MRV obligations, since we cannot have the linkage, meaning two different entities assuming the obligations, one for MRV and the other for ETS in respect of the same ship. Next slide, please. So, as shown again in December, according to the shipping company definition as incorporated in the ETS and MRV system, we have the register owner, which by default will remain the entity responsible for compliance with the legislation. However, the additional flexibility brought to the system is provided by the possibility for an ISM company, also known in general as the DOC holder, to get mandated to be delegated such a responsibility by the register owner. Attention, because the ISM company has always to be understood as the company having accepted the ISM code responsibility in respect of that specific ship. It shall correspond to the ISM company in respect of the ship, not any ISM company. If that is the case, the obligation to provide a document which we will refer as a mandate, the mandate referring implementing regulation 2023/2599 shall be provided. Otherwise, the delegation of responsibility cannot be concluded. Next step, please. So, a few words about this mandate. The mandate is a document which needs to be provided by the register owner of the ship and addressed to the ISM company. It is a document which shall be provided in respect and shall cover every ship for which the delegation of responsibility take place. And it is addressed to both the verifier, because it is needed for the assessment of a ship's monitoring plan when there is a delegation of responsibility, to the administering authority in the context of the approval of the monitoring plan, and to the registry authority, meaning the national administrator in the registry, this time in connection to the procedure for the opening of a MOHA. So the mandate plays this double role. It is needed both to assume the MRV ETS responsibility, but also to have a perfection of the compliance in the registry. Even though we have two different legal instruments, one is the MRV regulation ETS directive, the other is the registry regulation, the term mandate is referring here to the same document, because it will bind the same subjects. It will just be addressed to different authorities involved in the compliance cycle, the one you see in this slide. As you might already well know, there is no template provided by the European Commission for such a document. However, the information which shall be contained in the mandate, which are essential elements to the mandate, are laid down in the mentioned Commission implementing the regulation, Article 1, Paragraph 3, and are also mirrored in Annex 7A.4 of the Commission delegated regulation known as the Registry regulation. Again, in these slides you have hyperlinks directly going to URLs for the legal texts. Next slide, please. Now, moving to the next step, the attribution to the administering authority. The key principle, the guiding principle here is that each shipping company which is active within the ETS and which is then seeking compliance shall be associated with the administering authority of one member state. How does the attribution takes place? The Commission has published at the end of January an attribution list through the Commission Implementing Decision 2024-411. which is in fact a list of shipping companies. It names companies and the relevant administering authority, meaning the member states. The list has been established in accordance with the legislation. The ETS directive sets the criteria, the rules for the determination of this list. And on the basis of the data available in THETIS MRV and for the port calls history when needed through the data available in SafetyNet. An important point to recall is that the list lists companies which are the regulated entities and not the ships, because in case where there are changes in the shipping company activity, those do not impact the list. So for instance, if there are purchase or if some ships are sold, if the fleet size changes, if some ships are no longer active, this do not have an impact on the list. According to the legislation, the list is to be revised as a general rule every 2 years, with a specific rule of 4 years in some cases. And what is important to stress is that once a company is on the list as published in this act, it stays on the list. It's not possible to request a change of attribution. Now, as said, why is the attribution important? The attribution is necessary for a company to meet its ETS compliance obligation. If a company, however, is on the list, this does not necessarily mean that the company needs to comply with the ETS obligation, meaning opening a MOHA and surrender allowances. Because of the way the list has been established, as mentioned in the previous slide, it might well be that there are some companies which are currently listed on the document, which has been published through EURLEX, and it's on our website, and will not be modified before at least 2 years, which do not have any obligation in respect of ETS. And such companies, for instance, because their ships are no longer active and after December 2023 they do not carry any activity relevant to within ETS, in such cases the list will not have an obligation to open a MOHA or to contact the national administrator in the registry. At the same time, and on the other hand, it's true that the mere fact of not being on the list doesn't mean that a company which, on the contrary, has ETS obligation shall not carry out steps to comply with those obligations. So if a company which was not listed because its data's activity was not used for the establishment of the list is now active, for instance, starting as of February or March this year or later on, it will have to comply with ETS obligations. Next slide, please. So what shall those companies do in those cases? Because it might well be that my company falls within this latter category, this latter group of companies. So if I consult the list, which I understand will remain the same for at least 2 years, I don't see the name of my company, but still I know that my company will have some ETS obligations because I will have assumed responsibility in respect of some active ships within ETS scope. What shall I do? So there is a process, a step-by-step process, and basically what I need to do is to ask for the attribution and for my company to be attributed to the administering authority of a member state. And this process takes place within and through THETIS MRV. So the very first step, and I would like to again mention that there will be a live demo dedicated on this by EMSA colleague shortly. First step is to open a user account if I don't have it yet, because maybe my company is a new company. I founded my company at the beginning of this year. And I have to create a company within THETIS MRV. After that, I will have to claim all my relevant ships, the ships which will be active within ETS, for which I will be assuming the ETS responsibility. I shall claim them in the system, I will select them basically, and I will bring them under the My Fleet section of THETIS MRV. It's important that this claiming is complete and that I list all the relevant ships at the moment of requiring the attribution. To this end, I will have to contact the IT helpdesk through email. It's very simple. I will have to use this email address, which is the IT helpdesk, and ask for the triggering of the attribution. And after the finalization of the attribution, which might take some hours or some days, depending on the complexity, my administering authority will then appear in the THETIS MRV environment. So the next question is, when shall I request the attribution in THETIS MRV? There is no explicit, strong, hard deadline in the legislation. But what is important to recall is that if I don't have an attribution, I will not be able to submit my monitoring plan, and I will not be able to complete the process of opening a MOHA. So there are explicit deadlines in the legislation for these two steps, submitting the monitoring plan and requiring the opening of a MOHA. And the fact that I delay the request for the attribution in THETIS MRV will not trigger a postponement of these hard deadlines. So I would better be careful and take note of this overall context. Next slide, please. So now the next topic is the opening of the MOHA in the Union Registry, and for this set of slides, I leave the floor to my colleague Mathieu.
Thanks, Luca. My name is indeed Mathieu Moulonguet. I'm Policy Officer also in the same unit, and I will try to guide you through the last few slides of this first presentation. And here we will focus on the opening of indeed maritime operator holding accounts, what we call MOHA, in the Union Registry. And first, the first question is, of course, as a general introduction, what is the Union Registry? And this is the IT system that ensures the accounting of EU ETS allowances. And we already had a general introductory presentation on the Union Registry in our webinar that was held in December 2023. And here again, you will have the hyperlink to go directly check this webinar if need be for more background information on the registry. What I would like to recall here is that having a MOHA is a prerequisite for ETS compliance, because you would need a MOHA, a shipping company would need a MOHA to enter its emissions levels at company level and surrender a corresponding number of allowances to get the compliance status at company level. And this compliance status in the registry will be granted by 30th September of year +1, because you will need to report the emissions in the registry in the year after the reporting period. Please note that the deadline for entering the emissions at company level and marking them as verified in the registry is before 1st April of year N+1. So first, the shipping company should enter the emissions and mark them as verified in the registry. And then if we need to surrender a corresponding amount of allowances by the end of September of year N+1. The key principle here is that one shipping company equals one account. So one shipping company should have one account in the registry and should also have one account under the same name in THETIS MRV. Next slide, please. As I said, a MOHA can only be opened in the name of a shipping company, and that shipping company name should be the same in THETIS MRV and in the registry. This is where you can see the match between the two, and this is important for compliance. Once attributed to the administering authority of a member state, as per the process described by Luca earlier, the shipping company will need to initiate the opening procedure of a MOHA through the responsible national administrators, what we call sometimes the NA. And those national administrators are the persons responsible for administering the accounts in the registry on behalf of member states. You may find a list of these contact points on our webpage. Again, the hyperlink will be available on this slide. And we recommend you to enter into contact with those national contact points in order to seek confirmation on which documentation is needed to support the application file and whether those documents should be transmitted and uploaded directly on the national portal of the Union Registry or through other means. Because here the procedures may differ between different member states, so please contact the relevant national administrators for this procedure of opening a MOHA. There is no centralized EU help desk for the purpose of this request for opening a MOHA. I would like to stress here also the difference between national administrators, which refer to the authority in charge of the registry aspects, and what we call the administering authorities, which for maritime purposes are the authorities in charge of overall ETS compliance for the ETS and MRV. These are two different, this may be two different authorities, and you can have, again, on our webpage, the list of the different authorities, depending on whether we talk about the national administrator or the administering authority for ETS and MRV purposes. Next slide, please. So, the shipping company, for the request for opening a MOHA, should provide at least a certain type of information, and this is laid down in the Commission Directed Regulation EU 2019-1122 that you can find again online. We have the hyperlink here, and it is usually called the Registry Regulation. And here you are able to access all the documentation and information that is required for opening a MOHA. So I will not go into the details in this presentation because it would take too long, but for instance, some of the information that is to be provided by shipping companies include the IMO unique company and registered owner identification number, the mandate between the registered owner and the ISM company if there is any, so where applicable. It should also contain the list of ships under the responsibility of the registered owner when the shipping company is the registered owner. And for instance, a document identifying the structure of the group if the shipping company is part of a group. So you can see all these documents in this delegated regulation. And on top of that, please note that national administrators may ask for additional documents depending on national rules as applicable. So this is again an encouragement to get in touch with the relevant national administrators to make sure that you follow the procedure rightly and that you submit the documentation that is really needed. And with this should hopefully help you have a quality application and speed up the processing time of your request. Next slide and final slide. Please note these important deadlines that most of you probably know by now. The MOHA opening request shall be made according to the following timeline. So for all companies on the attribution list and active within ETS scope, the deadline is within 40 working days after the list publication. So as the list was published on the 31st of January this year, this leads to the 27th of March, because we are talking here of working days. If the company is not on the attribution list that was published at the end of January this year, then the deadline is that MOHA should be requested within 65 working days after the first port of call in EEA, falling within the scope of ETS. one important thing here that I would like to stress is that it is not required to first submit an assessed monitoring plan to the administering authority before filing the request for opening a MOHA. So this is not a requirement in the law, but of course, again, depending on member states, the procedures might differ and they might request to submit also the monitoring plan. So please contact your national administrators, but in principle, there is no such requirement to first have an assessed monitoring plan submitted before filing the request for opening a MOHA. With this, I give the floor back to Polona before we go to the live demos.
Thank you very much. So with this presentation, we're collecting any comments and questions that you have in the chat. But as mentioned before, we would propose to move through the presentations, including the live demos, and take the questions that we're collecting at the end. So with that, we would pass the floor to our colleagues in EMSA, who would then give a live demo on the opening of THETIS MRV account, and also how to ask for the attribution of your company to administrative authority if not already on the list. Colleagues in EMSA, the floor is yours.
Hello, good afternoon to everybody, and thank you for attending this meeting. So we will go through this demo with some of the steps for the companies requesting for the attribution to administering authorities and some other relevant steps to get to this point. So I'm going to give the floor to Tatiana. Thank you.
Okay, so for the live demo today, you can see on the screen the steps which we will go through. We will start with user account management. We will see how to create the new company, the new company's record in the system. Then we will see how to add ships into the company's fleet, and all those steps are required in order to request the attribution for the administering authority. So let's not waste more time with the presentation. Let's switch to the system directly. So first of all, the first which you need to think about is whether you have the THETIS MRV account created in the system. Because in case you've never used the system before, you need to go through the self-registration process, which is available on the main page of the system. And this is on the right side of the screen, which I'm showing now. In case you are not the registered user, you click self-registration button, register now, and you can go through those fields to fill in and to register the new THETIS MRV company's account. I'm not going to go through this process. I'm going to come back through to the main page, and I will use already created account in the system for the demonstration purposes. In case you have the THETIS MRV account created, another important note is to check whether you have the role of config administrator assigned to your account, because only with this particular role you will be able to manage companies inside of your account. So just as a reminder, because I think we went through this functionality during the previous webinar, in the config page on the tab users, you can see and you can manage all the users which will get access to your THETIS MRV account, to the companies, to the ships in this company's fleets, and also to the reporting functionality and submission of the monitoring plans. So as I said, important to note that only config administrator, which you can see in the upper right corner, I'm logged in as one, gives the opportunity to manage companies. In the same page, in the config companies tab, we can manage the companies. Also important to note that you can have several companies created in your THETIS MRV account. In this case, just for the demonstration purposes, you can see that I already have 3 companies created. By the way, you can see that 2 of them have been already attributed in the system to according administering authorities. And 1 of them has not been attributed yet. So just to make it a bit more clear for everyone, let's create the company during the live demo, and let's follow all the steps necessary to have it attributed. So in order to create a new company under your THETIS MRV account, click the button Add Company and fill in all the necessary details, starting with the company nature. Take into account that we advise to use either ISM or ship owner company's type. However, you will see that in the list you still have other company types available because before system was allowing to have those, and they are necessary for the historical records. For example, let's just quickly fill in all the fields, starting with IMO number, company name, company address. For example, let's create the company in Australia, outside the EU member states. And also other important information is to fill in correctly also the contact details of the person responsible for this company in the section contact person. I will skip some data here because that's not the purpose of this particular webinar. However, just for your information, that all the details which you enter in this section are going to appear in further if you create the monitoring plan for the ships under this company responsibility or emissions report. So it's very important to fill it in correctly. Okay, so we have filled in all the information, and we have created the new record of the ABC ships, ship owner from Australia in the system. Currently, you can see that so far we have 0 established partnerships with verifiers, as well as 0 ships in the fleet. For the next step, in order to be finally, eventually attributed to the according administering authority, for the companies which are outside of the European Union, we need to clearly count all the port calls for all the ships under this company responsibility, meaning that it's necessary to add ships in the fleet of this company. However, before doing so, we need to establish the partnership with the accredited verifier in the system, because otherwise the system will not allow you to add ships into the fleet. This is kind of additional step to just quality check that the company is really existing, because the verifier must accept your partnership request. To do that in the system, you can still you stay in the same config companies tab, and this can be done through Actions Verified Partnership option. For the purpose of this demo, we are not gonna create the new verifier in the system. I will show you later where you can find the video tutorial for that if it's necessary. So we have already created the verifier, which we can search and which we can choose and send the partnership request by choosing actions request partnership to our to the chosen verifier. So in this case, the system will send the partnership request to your verifier, and from this moment you should wait until the partnership request has been accepted on the verifier's part. It means the verifier would need to log into the system and accept your request from your company. Until it is done, you won't be able to proceed with adding ships. So in our case, we are not going to wait for the verifier to do that. We are going to use the company which I recreated just before the webinar started for the ABC shipping from Australia with already accepted request from the verifier. So now we can follow the next step and we can see how to add ships in the fleet of the company. To add ships, we need to go back to my fleet page and start searching ships by clicking Add Ship button, which is located in the lower left corner. You can search the database with ships by providing IMO number, and I have already a few IMO numbers prepared for the demonstration purposes. So what we can see here, for example, we are trying to add ships. We can see that the ship has been found. However, in this case, it's a very common situation, which you need to take into account, that it can happen that you cannot add ships because they are claimed by another company. This means that the ship currently is already in the fleet of another company in THETIS MRV. You cannot add ships before the other company, the previous manager or the previous owner released them. So in this case, we advise you to do the following. In the system, you can see there is a button which is called Report Ships in Re-owned Companies, by clicking which you can send the automatic request to the previous owners or managers to release the ships. And also you can see that you will be also notified when the ships are released from their current company. So you can do that. We advise that to do it in any case. However, in the case if the ships have been, for example, acquired very recently, you can also contact the previous managers directly, asking them to release the ships in the system. And okay, so let's try another one. When the ship has been released by the previous manager, or for example, it's already available, you did not have to click it, then you will see the following screen. So you will see that the ship has been found and is ready to be added to your fleet. Another important information which you have to specify on this step is since when the ship should be considered under responsibility of your company. This can be done in this field, ship and company effect date. So for example, let's choose 1st of January 2024, meaning that no matter when I'm adding ships, it can be today, it can be yesterday, it can happen tomorrow, and so on, the system will count the port calls of that ship starting with the date when it's under responsibility of your company, meaning this particular date. Another important aspect here is to choose which company is taking the responsibility. In case when you have several companies created in your account, you can choose any of them. So for example, I will choose ABC Shipping is taking the ship under its responsibility starting with the 1st of January 24. And confirming this action. Okay, so now we can see that in my fleet page, we have a new ship. And this ship is under the company ABC Shipping. You can see that, for example, after adding the ships, which you have recently acquired, maybe you need to change the ship particulars. This can be all done in by editing ship data from this option, edit ship. So you can see that you can change if the name has changed and so on. So all the details can be modified. Same as, for example, you've made a mistake with the ship and company effect date. This date can also be adjusted afterwards. You can edit this date in the company tab. And as I said before, this is very important because the port calls will be counted only for the period when the ship was under your company's responsibility. Okay, so after all the ships have been added into the fleet of your company, the next step would be, again, to check in the config companies tab if everything is correct. So now you can see that okay. So here you can check again if everything is correct, if you have the established partnership with the verifier, if you have how many ships you have in your fleet, and then you will be ready to be attributed to the according administering authority. So this is the moment when you can ask for the attribution. So before we go there, let me just remind you again all the steps. So first step was the creation of the account in THETIS MRV. So it could go either through the self-registration or you have already the account in the system created. The second step would be the creation of the company record and establishing the partnership with the verifier. And here, important to wait until the verifier accepts the partnership. The next step would be to add ships to the company's fleet. And again, important to add all the ships under the responsibility of your company with the correct ship and company effect dates. And the very last step, on this moment, you can ask for the attribution to administering authority. And this action you can do just using the email and the address that is at EMSA Europe EU. Send us the request clearly mentioning the company name, company IMO number, in order to be attributed. Here also just a few more maybe advices in order to have this process a bit smoother and quicker for everyone. We suggest to make the request, one request per company. So for example, If you send us the list with 10 or 20 different companies to be attributed, of course, it can take longer, because if there is an issue with any of the companies from the list which requires some extra checks, then of course everything will be delayed. However, the good practice, and that's what we recommend, is just to send us several requests. One request, one separate email per one company attribution. In this sense, it will go quicker, and the process will be more straightforward, and you will get a faster answer from our help desk colleagues. Here, I would like to say that, of course, I like regarding the questions in the chat, how long it can take. So you can understand that there are a lot of requests coming to our help desk, and we are trying our best to manage all of them. And we are taking them sequentially, you know, by the time of arrival. And it really depends on the specific case, on the specific situation. If everything has been done correctly, if the account is there, if the company is created, if all ships are added in the fleet, and with the correct information about the company, country, IMO, and all the ships in company effect dates, then the request can be processed within 2 working days, and afterwards the company will be attributed to the according administering authority. However, if there are some complications on any of the steps of the process, then my colleagues will start writing you the clarification request for additional information, and so on. So we just ask you to be patient, and in case you have any additional clarifications required, you can also send those requests to this help desk address, because this is a general technical help desk for all the questions related for THETIS MRV system, not only for the attribution. And another important information which can also help you, and which can maybe facilitate a bit the use of the system by the first-time users who never used it before, you can check the FAQ section, which is available on the THETIS MRV system. If you click on the FAQ, you will find one of the bullets there where I can get information. And there you can have the link to the pre-recorded tutorials, video tutorials with all the screen sharing by, and they are structured by different topics. So starting with the creation of the user account, creation, adding ships, and so on. So establishment of the verifier partnership. So all the aspects of the use of different functionalities of the use of the systems are there, so you can use it, you can refer to it if you have any questions. Or of course you can always also refer back to us, but then take into account, because of all the attributions happening at the moment, it might take a bit longer time, and you need to be a bit more patient to get the request from our help desk. I think that's it from my side. Thank you, and I will stop sharing. So back to you, Brussels.
Colleagues in EMSA. Thank you very much, Tatiana. Thank you very much, colleagues in EMSA. So I propose that we move then to the next presentation, which is again a live demo, but now of the MOHA, so Maritime Operator Holding Accounts functionality in the Union ETS Registry. So I would pass the floor to the relevant colleagues there.
Hello, good afternoon. I don't know if you are hearing me now.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I would only ask for Luca or Mathieu to share the slide with the structure of the demo. I don't know.
Thank you, Marta. You can proceed. Can you hear us?
Yes, yes. You can proceed
Thank
to
you,
the
Marta.
demo.
You can proceed orally. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Okay. So for this presentation, I would start with some highlights about the EU login account, which is a prerequisite to access the Union Registry, and also making some reference to the EU login mobile app that you will need to complete all the steps for authenticating the system. And we'll talk a bit about the user registration in Union Registry. We'll show you how to create a MOHA account, the several sections that constitute the form for creation, and some specific fields too. And then we'll access an active MOHA account to see the structure of the account, some details, how to perform some transactions like transfers between accounts and surrender of allowances. And finally, we'll talk a little bit about the compliance and the entering emissions. And that would be it. And we'll start sharing. Okay, when you see, please confirm if you can see my screen. Okay, thank you. So this would be the welcome page, the main page of the Union Registry, meaning that we still haven't selected a registry, and we will do it here. As you can see, we have the options here for selection. We'll select this one, Greece, and then you will have the possibility to log in if you are already a user. If you already have also used the system before, or if you are a first-time user. For that first-time user, there are two options. So if you already have a new login account or you don't have a EU login account yet. So the first step would be to create the EU login account. So we click create. This is the form that you will need to provide this information, basic information in order to start the creation of the EU login account. So here you will have to use the same email in these two fields and click create an account to submit the request. Then you will receive an email, or this email that was specified here, with all the information you need to set a password, and also you will be able to get back to this account to define several more fields like the contacts, and you will for sure need to add a phone number and also to add a mobile device, meaning this will have this will be needed to link the phone to your EU login mobile app. You will need this app for something that I will show you in a few seconds. So for this one, I will use a user that already has a EU login account, and I will click login. So I have a username that was provided in that email I talked about before. And the next step would be to select a second factor for authentication. So we will have to provide the password, and then we will have to select the EU login mobile app QR code. So for accessing the UR, so the Union Registry, we will need to select this one. And we'll sign in. So now we'll have this QR code on the screen. And at this point, you will need to use your EU Login mobile app to scan this QR code. Then the app will give you this code. This one is already here because it's in a test environment, but you will have to input manually here and click sign in. So that's why the first part is important. Here, what happened here is that this user doesn't have, is not registered yet in this Greek registry. So for this case, I will have to add some information about the registration of this user in Union Registry. So some of this information already is filled in because it is taken from the EU login account. And especially here for the mobile phone number, this value should really match the phone number that it was added previously in EU login account. So when we submit this request, the NA will be notified and will send you an enrollment key in order to validate you as a user and send you an enrollment key that you will be able to enter when you come here to the registry again. When submitting this request, you will have a URID, that is the unique identifier for the Union Registry that you shall use in your communication with your NA. So for this Greece registry, I still don't have, I'm still not a registered user, so I will use, for the sake of the presentation, another registry for which this user already is registered. So I have one user that can be, so one EU login account that can be used in several registries. Again, I will use the QR. I will use here. This is a test environment, so I might see some errors, or you might see some errors. Hopefully not, but it's possible. So for starters, when we are a newly registered user, probably we won't have so many accounts or none, or we can only request new accounts. But for this, I'm using, so in the Bulgarian registry, I will maybe, yes, zoom in it a little. For this purpose, I will use then this registry where we have more accounts to check. For starters, and I will select the option request new account. That's here in the upper left side. Also, this is all dependent on the rules that each registry has or NA has, because in some registries it's not possible for an account representative to create an account. Only NAs create, and this is all also controlled by permissions. So all of these options that we see here are controlled by permissions, and we will only see the maritime operator holding account option if everything is according to those rules and permissions. So we select, in this case, I have the permissions to request a new maritime operator holding account. I will need to give it a name. And I will go through all of these sections. If you notice, this section is highlighted in green, that is positively validated. So for this section, I don't need anything more. Then we'll have the account holder section to fill in. For this account holder section, the first thing that we have to do is to select if this account holder is a company or a person. According to that, the fields that are shown here in this form will change. So if the account holder is a person, if you saw this first fields disappeared, so the VAT registration number, company registration number, and here below we'll have person details associated to this account holder. So date of birth, identity documents, so personal information. And this central part here is common to person or company. So the address and contact information. There are here, and when it is a company, besides the VAT registration number and the company registration number, we'll have here two extra fields that are optional, that where we can identify the parent company or the subsidiary or subsidiaries of this account holder. And here we can create new ones with the corresponding registration number, or we can select from a list. So we already have a list with several companies from which we can select. And we can also add subsidiaries, and the same. We can create a new one, or we can select from the list. Okay. There is other two fields that are important here, and this shipping company name as it is in MRV, and this authorized trading venue or central counterparty that specifies if this account holder is an authorized trading venue. Then when we are performing transfers with this account or with accounts that are from this account holder, the bilateral transaction, what I will show you later, when we are performing a new transfer, the transfer will be characterized as non-bilateral. So it's not considered to be between only two parties and without intermediaries. So whenever we have this selected yes will or no, it will have some consequences in the future when we are trying to perform transfers. That's why I wanted to talk a little about this. But we can also, this is for the case where we are filling in manually, but we can also select an existing account holder name. That account holder can be also an account holder of other account types, like operator holding accounts for installations, or aviation holding accounts. So we can aircraft operator holding accounts. So we can select from the existing list, and we can enter the name of the account holder or the ID. This is the ID 126800. When we do that, we won't be able to fill in any of these fields. They are read-only and we can edit them later. So for the maritime operator information section, we will have the IMO number to fill in. It's mandatory. The shipping company name, the country, company country of registration, and the shipping company type. For this shipping company type, according to the selection, we will see different information below. If we select registered owner, we can have a possibility to enter ISM companies related to it and with the name and corresponding IMO number. That is optional, but when we are saying that the shipping company type is an ISM company, then we will have, it's mandatory to identify the registered ship owner for which the company is responsible. So here we really need to add a new entry. And the corresponding IMO. The first year of verified emission starts in 2024. That is the first year where when we can create MOHA. So for this part here, the address and contact information, we can reuse the one that is already filled in for the account holder if we click on this check box here. Then we'll have the transaction settings section. And for this section, what do we need to do? So these are settings that are related to transfers, mainly because the main principle in the Union Registry is the 4I principle, meaning that someone can, a user can initiate one transfer, but it will have to be approved by another. So 4Is will be needed. If we say, but here we can say that only 2Is are needed if we click yes. And also we have this concept of trusted account list. So transfers for those accounts, the accounts that are on the trusted list, we can say that we allow transfers only to accounts on that trusted list, or we can say that we also allow transfers to accounts that are not on that list. In principle, and for security reasons, it would be only on that trusted account list. But here I will say yes to both. Then for adding account representatives, you will need at least 2 with a certain combination of rights. As I was saying, one account representative can initiate a transfer, the other has to approve. So at least we will have one initiator, one approver. I can show you. So for this one, as I selected an existing account holder, I can also select account representatives that are associated to that account holder. That is the URID that I was talking about earlier. So for this user that I'm using now, is this BG, starts with BG, as we are in the Bulgarian registry. And for the rights, as I was saying, we can have the initiate only, but if this one is the initiate only, the other has to be the approve only. Also common is to have this initiate and approve for both of the account representatives, which I will also use here. So for the other authorized representative, I will select the other on the list and initiate and approve rights. if this was a new account holder and we don't have any authorized representative link to it, we will need to also enter here the URID, but also we will need to also fill in all of these details. So again, some information about the address and contacts, but also some other information as employer name, employer department, and job title. I will remove this one. I only need these two. Then we have two optional sections. There are the whole section is optional. So the contact person can be we can select one of the representatives that we defined before to be a contact person. If we do that, if we click yes, then we can choose one of those authorized representatives added before. So I can select this one, and the information that already is filled in also is automatically filled in here. But I can also do it manually. And all of these fields are optional, as you can see, so I can do this only by, for instance, only the name and the telephone number. Unless this person, this contact person, is one of the authorized representatives that we selected before, this is only for information purposes. So this person won't have a role in the system. We cannot do anything in the system unless, as I was saying, if it was one of the authorized representatives, because for those we already gave some permissions. The last section is also related to transactions. So for instance, when it's applied to the transfer of allowance, for instance, we can set a transaction limit for each transaction, or a daily transactions limit, or weekly, or for the last days. This is for the work week, last 7 days, or monthly. So for instance, in this case, we will say that transaction will have a limit of 1,000 allowances. And when we are performing transfers, when we are initiating a new transfer, if we want to transfer more than 1,000, the system won't allow, because we set this limit. That is the purpose of these voluntary thresholds. But as you can see, it's optional too. So after all the sections are positively validated, then we can request new account. So you will have this identifier, and this will generate some approval task that DNA will approve. I will use now, not going to do this approval, we'll show an existing account with some data. So as you can see, this account has the balance. This represents the allowances that this account holds. And some of the things that we defined before, as the IMO, the 2 eyes settings, transfers to not until accounts are allowed. So this is some information that we set in the account creation. So when we enter the account, we go straight to that information that most of them, the information that we filled in when requesting a new account. all of the account holder, the contact person. In this case, as it is an optional section, we don't have any values here because we didn't fill in. And for the maritime operator information. So as you can see, we also have a button here, the edit button. We can update this information at any time as long as we have permissions to do that. So this is also dependent on permissions. So for the trusted accounts, as I was saying before, we have automatically a list of companies that we consider trusted because they share the same account holder. So we have the same account holder we can see here for those all of those accounts. So automatically we consider those as trusted. So if we can only perform transfers on TAL, means that we can only perform transfers to these accounts that are on this list. We can add manually others, but again, subject to permissions. So for the representatives, here we will be able to see the authorized representatives that we added in the account creation. Also, we can add representatives as time goes by, and we can also replace, remove, update the details, or change roles. So also depending on the permissions that we have. So some of those or most of those operations that I've been exemplifying are subject to another an NA approval. So there's something that might be considered too. For the balance and transactions, if this was a new account, then no data will be presented here. But since we have some history of some transactions made, we can see here which are pending, which are ongoing, which are completed. So you can see here if that some of these transfers of allowances were made from a trading account to a MOHA account, but you can also see that we can have a transfer between a MOHA to another MOHA, and also from a MOHA to a trading account. So how can we do this? There is this button here, new transaction, and option new transfer. And here we can select the account to which we are transferring allowances, which can be from the trusted account list, as you can see here, or in this case, not to accounts not on the trusted account list, according to the settings that we defined before. If we are using an existing one, the account holders list, so trusted account list with the same account holder, we can select here, or we can do it to another account, and we need to know the account number and the check digits that are the two last digits of the account. No, not this one. The rest is filled in automatically by the system. So here you will have the unit types that you can transfer. In this case, we only have general aviation allowances, but we could have all the unit types here, the existing unit types, the general allowances, or the Swiss allowances too. And the quantity to transfer, we should then establish the, okay, not enough, right, we only have 83. So selecting the unit types, if we had more, that would be listed here, and the quantity to transfer. And then if we had all for this account and from the transferring account and the acquiring account were had defined if there were authorized trading venues when creating the account or later in the account holder details, we could have automatically selected this if this is a bilateral transaction or not. Since these accounts, neither of those accounts have selected this because it was optional in the beginning, we need to do it manually. So in this case, it is these are two MOHA accounts, and we'll consider that it is a bilateral transaction where you have here a definition. So it's an over-the-counter trade executed between two entities without any intermediaries. So then we can propose. That's how we perform a transfer. I will go back and we'll show you another possible operation here, that is surrender of allowances. The surrender of allowances can be done at any time, and you can perform several partial surrenders. So if we need to surrender 1,000 allowances, we can perform surrenders of 200, then the 500, then 300. So we can do it like that. And what cannot happen is the decimal value. So we can we should use always integer values. So something like this. But the system will okay. But the system will tell you, will show you some warnings and error messages when needed. So to finish with the presentation, we'll only show you this for the compliance page. Now we aren't yet in a compliance obligation yet, but this will change according to according to several status, to 3 status. Can be A, B, or C. So if it is C, it means that you still haven't reported emissions. If it is B, you reported emissions but haven't surrendered the amount of allowances needed to cover them. And if it is A, then you reported emissions and surrender allowances on the amount or above the reported emissions. And for this case, we will have the 3 levels of verified emissions as that shall be reported at company level and in accordance to the legislation. That will be the full derogated and reduced. For your consideration, this reduced would be the value that will tell you how many allowances you need to surrender. And another thing to mention here is that the verifiers need a specific accreditation for MOHA. And if there isn't any verifier yet, that this is the message that appears. So only after that would be in the end of this year and the beginning of the next year, the verifiers can be accredited for MOHAs, and then they will be able to be appointed. So we will be able to click appoint verifier. We can select from a list, and the verifier has to accept the appointment and then start to verify all the emissions that were reported. Or according to permissions 2 and according to registries, we can, the verifier also can report emissions. And then here in this compliance history table, we can see which emissions are verified yet or aren't verified yet or were already verified. And that leads us to the conclusion of this demo, and I hope it was useful. And again, if you have any doubts, and it might change according to the registry and national administrators, please contact them to know exactly which is your case. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marta. And indeed, we have the list of national administrators for the registry also on our website. So you can always consult that to know who you need to contact to open a registry account in a member state. With that, we would open the floor to answer some of the questions that we have been collecting during this webinar. So I pass the floor to colleagues.
Thank you, Polona, and good afternoon to all participants. So we had several questions on compliance and future deadlines. For instance, we had the case of a company explaining that some of its ships were under the responsibility of another company in 2023 for MRV obligation. And they are now waiting for the previous company to finalize the submission of the 2023 emissions report in THETIS MRV before being able to claim back those ships under their fleet in the system. And they are afraid that due to this specific situation, they will not be able to meet the 1st April deadline for the submission of revised monitoring plan to their administering authority, and they wonder what will happen if they miss the deadline and whether penalties will be applied. So to respond to this question and concern, first of all, let's recall that while the legal deadline for submitting 2023 emissions report for the previous reporting period is indeed on 30th of April this year, nothing prevents the previous company that was in charge of MRV obligation to submit the emissions report at an earlier date. And by doing that, this would ultimately facilitate the meeting of the 1st April deadline for the new company that is responsible for ETS and MRV obligation. It should also be noted that member states are ultimately responsible for ensuring compliance of companies attributed to them and for the overall enforcement of the system. It is therefore up to the specific administering authority to which the company has been attributed to address non-compliant situation, such as, for instance, in relation to the upcoming deadlines. So if a company is facing specific challenges, they may therefore want to contact their administering authority and share this specific situation with them. We also received some questions about the deadline for opening MOHA, Maritime Operator Holding Account. And on that matter, it is important to keep in mind that the deadline corresponds to the date by which the shipping company should request the opening of its MOHA, with, of course, all the necessary supporting documents. And the actual opening, the opening itself of the MOHA, of the registry account, should take place within 40 working days from the receipt of the complete set of information. So important to understand that the request is different than the actual opening of the account. We also had another question on whether an ISM company mandated by a ship owner, a registered ship owner, will be liable in case of possible non-compliance and in case of possible sanction. And here, it is important to explain again that the ETS MRV responsible shipping company will always be considered as the entity ultimately responsible for the overall ETS compliance by member states when they are looking at the right and the good enforcement of the legislation. And this means that if the ISM takes on the responsibility, the ETS MRV responsibility for specific ships, also based on the mandate, that company, the ISM company, will of course be considered as the responsible entity for compliance by the member states. Mathieu or Luca?
Thank you, Tim. Another interesting question we received was about cases where we have a company being responsible both in respect of ships it owns, for which is a registered owner, ships for which he acts as ISM, in respect of being mandated to this end by other companies. So in practice, we will have one single shipping company being responsible for a fleet, a mixed fleet case, which groups together different ships. In that case, the question we received was whether it is possible for the shipping company to have separated, distinct MOHAs, and also distinct company accounts in THETIS MRV. And here the answer is simple, because we have always to remind that compliance under ETS takes place at fleet level. So the shipping company will be either compliant or non-compliant in respect of the entirety of the fleet. That being said, there will be only one MOHA and only one THETIS MRV action, by which it is highly recommended that the company nature to be indicated in these cases, where the company is both active as an owner and an ISM, is to be indicated as ISM by nature, and this is due to technical constraint of the system. And of course, in relation to the ships which the company owns, for which the company is also the registered owner, no mandate will be needed, because that would be in practice the company mandated itself, so there will be no two distinct legal entity. But again, this is an important concept. Only one MOHA account shall be established in respect of one legal entity, one IMO number.
Should we give the floor to EMSA colleagues for a few questions we received more on the IT side and on THETIS MRV? Please, Lisbon.
Hello again. So how are you doing? So we have some questions that we'd like to answer. So we have the question: how many days it takes for attribution of administering authorities to a company once account is made in THETIS? So as we said before, the duration depends on a case by case. It can take up to 2 working days in the best case scenario, and the duration is extending in case the information in THETIS MRV system is incomplete. As we explained, sometimes people think that they have filled in all the information, but the company is not registered in the system, the ships are not added to the fleet, so there are some cases where we have to go into more details. Another question: do you have any idea how long it takes for the help desk at Fit for 55 EMSA location to respond on questions? Of course, we cannot say exactly how long it will take. It depends on the question complexity. So sometimes some questions require additional legal confirmation, and some other times we go just for general guidance, which of course this leads to different response times. We expect to give as quick as possible, but sometimes we need to take further steps also. We also have a question which goes for what we have presented. So in what scenario does the main administration account will have 4 companies? All these are 4 different companies, and they should have different account to surrender allowances and for reporting obligations. So please explain. So in the system, the functionalities available allows the creation of multiple companies in a single THETIS MRV account, if it is necessary. So, but in any way, each ship is clearly linked with its responsible company and verifier. So it's always an independent link between company verifiers and the ships. We can foresee a scenario where we can have a company which holds 4 different companies, one for each ship. In such case, the user could have the 4 companies and link them to each relevant ship. At the moment of reporting the annual aggregated emissions report at the company level, the use will have 4 distant company emission reports, which will be submitted to each relevant administering authorities. And each company emission reports will be related to one ship only, but all managed by one user account only. So this is the principle, is to have one account that can, and one config administrator who can create users and assign roles to these users. So this config administrator can create companies and add vessels to the company. From the system point of view, if the account config administrator creates a user and gives it to the ISM manager, for example, then he can manage the activities of the company, but nevertheless, the shipping company is the final responsible entity and not this manager or user. So from the system view, from the system view, it is only a user of this account and with the responsibility of the company that is with the ships below the company responsibility. So these are some of the points that we wanted to share with you, and I'll give the floor back to you in Brussels.
Thank you, Ricardo. And maybe now I see there are also some questions related to the Union Registry. So I will pass the floor to our colleagues in CLIMA who have been presenting on this. Marta?
Yes, hello again. For the Union Registry specifically, we had a question about the layout or the page being different from the use is different from what we shown here, but that can be due to a lot of different things. So first of all, maybe it is a existing user of the Union Registry, and might be more familiar with how the old user interface looked like. And this is the new user interface that was made available in the beginning of this year, in January, and it was available mainly for the maritime operator holding accounts and the corresponding operations. That might be one of the reasons. That another possible reason is that they are talking about some national application that some member states have their own, and they are separate, completely separate and independent systems from this one. They are maintained by the member states, and so this is also one of those cases where you really need to contact the National Registry to look for the procedures to see what you have to do and which systems you have to use besides the Union Registry. So you should reach out directly to your national contact point for that. So for the rest, this is already available for public use. So national administrators of each member state would communicate to the end users when it's available and how to connect to this user interface. So that should be one of those cases. In any case, you should talk to the national administrator. And the only thing that we also see here is the welcome page. The only thing that is different is the welcome text that might vary according to the registry. So it can be configured. So that would be it. You should reach out to your contact point. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everybody. So I think with this, we have exhausted both the time available. In fact, we've gone a bit further, but it was very useful, as well as the main questions that we received in the chat. So I would very much like to thank you for, again, very active participation, which also shows that you are very sort of active already in starting the compliance and implementation of the EU ETS also on your side. I think between today's and previous webinars, we have now collectively reached participation of more than 2,500 participants, which again also shows the interest of the community in these webinars and the communication activity that we're providing. So we very much intend to continue with that, and we plan to organize a 6th webinar, which will happen once we have also the functionalities on reporting of emissions, the new functionality for the reporting of emissions in THETIS MRV up and running. So we will inform you of the date and the ways to register through the usual channels when that is available. Meanwhile, we invite you, as always, to continue checking the websites of the Commission, DG CLIMA, as well as EMSA, for any additional information and updates that we will provide there. And if you don't find the answers there, please do contact us through the help desk email that you already know. So with that, thank you very much. Thank you, colleagues, for all the support here in Brussels, in Lisbon. And thank you for participating, and we see you soon through another webinar. Thank you.